Good afternoon. I'm Julie Sullivan, President of the University of St. Thomas, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our first Friday speaker series. The second semester began on Monday, and we are grateful to be offering classes in person. Our community has illustrated a culture of care and a respect for others, which has allowed us to remain open this academic year. I'm very proud of how our faculty and staff continuously adapt university models while maintaining our student-centered focus. As we look ahead, our community's creativity, resilience, and care undergird my optimism that St. Thomas will continue to thrive in an increasingly challenging and competitive higher education landscape. I'm excited to hear from Christophe Beck today about how Ecolab is taking the opportunity during the pandemic to look carefully at critical aspects of their organization, including attracting and retaining talent for the workforce of the future. I look forward to the insights he will share about Ecolab's vision. As the new Chief Executive Officer, Christophe is proud to carry on the legacy of strong leadership in this values-based company. His previous position was President and Chief Operating Officer, and he held several other senior leadership roles since he joined Ecolab in 2007. Prior to that, Christophe was a senior executive at Nestle, and interestingly enough, early in his career, he worked on a space shuttle project for the European Space Agency. Christophe will join Dr. Don Weinkauf, Dean of our School of Engineering, in a conversation about managing change, sustainability, and the workforce of the future. Don has served in his current role since he joined St. Thomas in 2008. He's very well respected by his fellow faculty members and a favorite among our students. He has been honored nationally for his teaching and research and is the author of more than 40 papers and book chapters. His research in polymer materials and plastics processing has been cited over 800 times in the literature. And now, I'm honored to welcome Christophe Beck.
Thank you so much, President Sullivan. It's such a pleasure to be together with you. I would have wished, obviously, to be in the room. I've heard that you have that, so we speak lunches, all together, friends, gathering, sharing insights, ideas, experience, and lives, and we do it over Zoom today, which is going to be okay. And as you said, I've been a month in my new role. I've been 14 years in the company. So I have limited experience in the new job, experiencing all the great things and the difficult things as well of that new role, but also building on a great legacy, as you've described, of greatness and really strong value in our company. So I thought if we get to the next chart as well, we will have to tag team, obviously. So with the technology in here is basically sharing as well with you a different perspective on my own journey. I can't see the chart now, so I hope that we have the right one, which is basically this line. So going up, yeah, that's the right one. Ultimately, I was looking, when I think about earlier in my career or even earlier in my own life, was basically so to think, well, all those successful people out there, what I was reading in the newspaper, what I was watching on TV or in the movies, ultimately gave me that feeling, well, they have a perfect life and everything is going straight up. It's like a staircase to heaven in other ways. And I didn't have that feeling when I was living my own life, actually. So I wonder why that. And much later in my own career, I realized that it was during the toughest moments that I would grow the most and ultimately rebound to the better place. When I think about my academic career as well, I'll just share it with you. I failed at my first year's exam to the great disappointment of my parents, obviously, at that moment. And I ended up at almost the top of my class in grad school then afterwards. It was one of those life-changing moments of ultimately a disappointment, a crucible, and learning from it and growing through it as well. And this has been very important for me as well when I think about all the challenges that I've had during my life, personal life, professional life, and as well what we experienced in 2020 when COVID struck as well in our company among everyone else, obviously in the world. So it was a very good experience for me, thinking back and saying, well, all those difficult moments ultimately made me grow, made me better. This is true for an organization as well. So when we entered the pandemic as a company with everyone else, ultimately, this is the mindset that I tried as well so to share with the overall organization and saying it's going to be difficult, but we're going to become stronger as well, so coming out of that. So to the next chart on our purpose, ultimately, we had a choice in March last year or in January when it started in China. As a company, we came together and we thought, well, we have two options. One, it's to help shape history because we knew it would be a historical moment. And the other option was to be shaped by history, which might have been a good thing or not so much a good thing as well at the same time. Well, we clearly decided that we would go for the former. We would help shape history and be proud of how we would do it, as my predecessor, Doug Baker, stated it with our team of 45,000 people around the world. Because thinking about our purpose of making the world cleaner, safer, and healthier by helping our customer ultimately protect people and the resources vital to life. If there was a moment where we could truly make a difference, that was the moment. And that's why we chose to really help shape history with our customers and our team as well around the world. And if you think about the resources that we have on the next chart, basically we have a vast array of ways ultimately to make a difference. Starting with our team, 45,000 people who are serving and supporting 3 million customers in 172 countries around the world. We have a lot of people in R&D, in 16 global technology centers. We have a lot of people in our factories in almost 100 places as well around the world. And it's the team that's making the difference. And that's why we're always talking so much about people when we think about our company and what we're doing. And ultimately on the next chart, as you can see, we've had a story of success, which has been an amazing story. That's been true the last 5 years. That's been true the last 10, 20, 30, or 97 years since we started to be in business in 1923, quite a long time ago. We've been much better than the stock market out there, measured with the S&P 500, and we're proud of the performance that we've delivered. But most importantly, it's again one of those examples of showing that while you go through crisis, being 9/11, being the financial crisis, being the oil crisis, or being COVID today, every time the company became stronger and went to the next level as well of performance, which was pretty special. So the question is also, why that? And the next chart is sharing a bit what are the key global challenges that we're seeing as well out there. And for us, half by luck and half by thoughtful planning, we consider that those big trends would be the ones that we would be riding. Those are the big world challenges that we chose we would help contribute to solve. Starting with water. When you think about it, in 2030, which is just 10 years down the road, we will be needing 56% more water than what the Earth as a whole can replenish. This is obviously a major challenge. At the same time as well, if you think how much drinking water do we have for the whole planet, which sometimes we think it's a lot because we have so much water around us in Minnesota or on the planet Earth. Well, if you put all the drinking water together in a bubble, that would be a bubble of 50 miles wide. This is nothing. It's a bit bigger than the Twin Cities. This is all we got. So how do we keep growing? How do we keep living ultimately with so much water that we have out there? If we think about food, we will need 35% more food as well. 1 billion people are going to join us as well on the planet. That creates obviously food security, food safety issues as well when you think about climate. We're fighting hard to stay within this 1 to 2 degrees of increase of temperatures over the next century. Well, the current trends are rather dragging us toward 3 to 5 degrees, which would be dramatic for our Earth and the way we live and the way we operate as well. When we think about public health, well, I don't need to go much in details because we're experiencing this one on a very daily basis with COVID-19, but this is not the only one that is impacting us, and more, unfortunately, is going to come as well going forward. This society as well, where we have a role as well to play as a company, helping support society as a whole, but also being a role model as much as we can within our own organization. And last but not least, you're thinking about companies as part of a whole stakeholder community, not just shareholders, but customers, team, communities, neighborhoods, suppliers. And when we think about this new trend of ESG, a new acronym, so to talk about environment, social, and governance companies, so that are the best at that, Ecolab has had the chance to be the fourth stock in the world most held by funds, pension funds as well out there, because of what we do, how we do, and how we drive performance as well. So it starts by making sure that we are really focused on the world's biggest problems, the growth trends that could help us as well carry the future of the company as far as it could be. So we have the right focus. Now the question is, how much of an influence can we have as well on those big trends? And that's where, when we look at the reach of the company, we are in a very fortunate place that has been built over 97 years. Again, almost 100 in here. When you think about it, we touch almost or over 1 trillion gallons of water with our customers around the world every single day. When you think about the food supply, well, we touch 36% of the world processed food supply in the world. So it's pretty significant, or 45% of all the milk that's being produced and consumed as well around the world. From a public health perspective, well, we are helping clean every week almost 1 billion hands as well around the world. So the impact is quite significant here. In terms of climate, we help produce 20% of the world's power, the electricity that's being produced as well. We serve 3 million customers around the world, so we have quite an impact on society at large as well in the most remote places around the world. And in terms of stakeholder, we see ourselves as really part of the community in the 170 countries that we operate and have the chance as well, so to enjoy living with our people that are living in all those places. So when we think afterwards, what does that mean on my next chart as well? It's understanding what's the impact. And the impact is related to the capabilities that we have, not just the trends that we're riding on, the reach that we have, but the fact that we have a culture of helping people. We are a people company helping people protect their own consumers, guests, and the natural resources that are out there. We have a brand that's trusted as well by the consumers. We're the global company leading hygiene and infection prevention services and technologies. We serve 80% of the world leading brands for decades, actually. We have local expertise in all those places around the world, because saying we help a customer out there being strong in the US is one thing, being able to do that everywhere around the world is another, obviously. And bringing obviously digital technologies around it helps us connect all those dots, all those locations that we are serving around the world. The 25,000 people that are serving those 3 million locations as well are connected. They can learn from each other. They can understand what are the best practices that are out there as well at the fingertip of their hands. So we have the right trends, we have the right reach, we have the capabilities that are pretty special. And when we bring all that together, as you see on my next chart, is how we create the magic. That everywhere around the world, our teams get technology, insights, expertise, global know-how, understanding what's to come, and help customers at the local level, like at the global level, to really deliver better outcomes, better results at the lowest total operating cost. And the interesting play with that model is that the more we do for a customer, the higher the return for that customer. The higher the return for them, the higher the return for the environment, because they use less natural resources. and the higher the return for us, because they want more of what we can provide to them, which is supporting the environment as well at the same time. So it's a total win-win. Win actually three times, for the environment, for the customers, and for us as well, ultimately. So thinking about impact as well, what that all means. So the next chart is giving a little bit of a glimpse of where we want to be in 2030, but it starts with today. We've been helping prevent hundreds of millions of infections around the world in hospitals, in long-term care facilities, in schools, in public spaces. And that's been true because of COVID, but not only, because infections are existing beyond COVID as well at the same time. In 2019, we haven't measured exactly for 2020 yet, so the numbers are coming out. We've helped save enough water for over 700 million people when you compare with their annual drinking needs. On our path, as you can see here, by 2030 to help save enough water for 1 billion people. It's to help our customer save enough carbon gas emissions, the equivalent of 4.5 million metric tons. It's to help provide safe food for almost 2 billion people. It's to help sanitize the hands of almost 50 billion people every year. So it's over one a week, as you can see as well in here, 1 billion a week as such. And it's to lead by example as well as a company, and making sure that we are an example as well, not just how we serve our customers, but how we support as well our investment community. But if you look at the next chart, it starts with us. Ultimately, so by leading by example. And we've set our impact goals so very carefully, looking at what we've done, what we can do, where it could get, and what kind of stretch is doable ultimately. And we said by 2030, we should be net positive in terms of water usage, which means that we would be providing more water that we're using, as well as an organization. We've committed as well so to get to zero carbon emission. Our commitment has been by 2050, our ambition is to get ultimately as close as we can, so by 2030. It's also from a diversity and inclusion perspective to reach full representation in our workforce, but also with our suppliers, with our customers, and how we live as well in our community. And last but not least, which is core to us, is really this goal zero in terms of safety, that no one gets hurt out of the 45,000 people we have around the world. And we've made great progress as well on that journey. So at the end of the day, and this is my next chart, it starts by us, but it ends with our culture and our values of really so reaching our goals, doing what's right, challenging ourselves, working together with diverse and different perspectives, and we make a difference. And for us, those values are at the core of everything we do. This has been true for 97 years, and we are nurturing them that they're going to be true for the next 97 years and beyond as well. So kind of a cool story. I've had the chance to be part of the Ecolab story for 14 years, as mentioned as well early on. I think it's a terrific story, like many others of companies and individuals as well out there. So I was glad that I had a chance during a few minutes to share the short story of a fairly long history of the Ecolab company. So with that, I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christophe, for sharing your journey with us, as well as the purpose and ambitions of your work at Ecolab. And I really like the way you started with, looking at the world's greatest challenges and problems, and then distilling that down, how it works with Ecolab. So I just have a few questions for you to keep this conversation going. We also have opened up the line for the audience to submit some questions, which I can ask at the end of my questions. But so, like St. Thomas, Ecolab is a purpose-driven organization. So tell us more about Ecolab's, what it means to you personally, and how that's helping you drive strategy at Ecolab.
Yeah, as mentioned before, there is no contradiction between being successful in business, or in other words, making money, and doing something good for society, for the world, for the environment. Too many are thinking that those two things are separate. I'm running my business, I'm making money in order to fund my future, and my social responsibility is ultimately a separate story. Well, no, there's no contradiction between the two. And as I've tried as well, so to share with you, is ultimately for us, the way we grow is by doing good. The more we help our customers save water, to take one example, the faster we grow. The more they reduce their carbon footprint, the more we grow. The more people we prevent from infections as well, the more we grow. So ultimately, there's a very natural way to bring doing good and doing well in one aligned approach. And when we think about strategy, well, it makes it very easy for us, because those 4 or 5 ambitions that I've shared with you as well before, well, is our ambition, our objective, and every strategy that we developed is ultimately aiming at addressing those big world challenges. So purpose, driving business success, and strategy are for us so very aligned, which makes our life much easier.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And part of your talk, you spoke about the capabilities of Ecolab and what you've developed to meet current challenges and emerging challenges, including digital innovation, which is something that here at St. Thomas we have particular interest in. So how is Ecolab leveraging digital technology, and how are you bringing the organization along in that transformation?
This is a great question and a topic that's being discussed at length everywhere, obviously, and especially so during COVID. Digital technology has been used way more than it used to be. In our own company, we were discussing as well with our CTO in March, April last year, and saying, well, the plans that we have ahead of us for the next 2 years, we're going to execute them in the next 2 quarters. And that's what we've done. But it's important to keep in mind that for us, and I guess for many as well, digital is a mean to an end. It's not about digitizing everything and then trying to figure out what do we do with all that data and all those investments as well that we've made. So ultimately, it's to create a bigger impact for our customers and for us to be more successful, to make more money. We're a business, obviously, as such. But the way we've defined our digital strategy, which has started 30 years ago, by the way, so we haven't started just in the past few years, was really to focus on 3 critical pillars. The first one is digital technology needs to add value to our customers by providing predictive insights. For instance, if to take one example, cooling towers in many plants around the world can spread a lot of pathogens. Legionnaire's disease is one of the example. Well, we've developed systems that can predict, depending on the weather, on how it's operating, basically, what's the risk of spreading the Legionnaire's disease, which is deadly, by the way. And this is one way, obviously, to create value for our customers. The second one is really to improve and enhance the customer experience. E-commerce, for instance, you can order your products directly online. You can know where they are, when they're coming, if there is an issue, and what can I do if I want to change as well. And the third one is really increasing the impact of our team around the world. As shared before, is really making sure that the 25,000 people that we have around the world serving those 3 million people, well, in the past, they had to learn everything from books, from experience, trial and error. Well, today, they can get that as well on our digital technology platform and understand, well, what's the best practice in order to do that, even if I'm in India and I want to understand how it's been done in Brazil. And to your question on how do we drive that transformation, there are many ways to do it. But for us, the easiest way to explain it, which is a little bit unusual to probably express it that way, is to say, well, what you're experiencing in your private life when you're streaming Netflix or you're ordering on Amazon or you're learning remote from St. Thomas, for instance, well, the same type of experience is the minimum standards that you should get when you are in the company and in the business as well. And interestingly enough, that has helped our teams gonna rally around digital technology in a much easier way. And that's one of the reasons why we've been able to move faster than we've ever been.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question has to do with great talent, and especially at companies like Ecolab with 25,000 team members across the globe, helping your customers solve big challenges. So there's really a two-part question. What are you doing to attract and retain talent? And then maybe reflect on what that means for us as a higher educational institution in terms of what we need to be doing to prepare the next generation of great talent and leaders.
Well, no, this is the core question, obviously. And for us, it starts by who we want to be. And ultimately, we want to be the place where the very best talent, with the right heart, with the right willingness to drive a purpose, want to join us because they can reach their potential, they can fulfill their ambition, and at the same time, and this is a real challenge, have a life as well, which is not obvious. The work-life balance question is not an obvious one. I have personally not completely solved it, but when we think about what we're experiencing during COVID, well, this has stretched our lives quite a bit, especially for women as well, with schools being closed, with daycare not operating as they used to as well. So it's really making sure that the best talent with the right heart want to join us, want to stay with us because they love our mission, and that they can have a life, a family life, a community life as well at the same time. So for us, this is the core promise, the core ambition on how we drive everything in order to attract and to retain the very best talent. To your question on how to coach and support and develop the next generation, I'd like to start with one comment. I think that unlike what our parents have a tendency to tell us, well, we used to be much better than you guys. You're kind of lazy, you don't get it. I don't know if, Don, you've experienced that in your own life. I remember talking with my grandparents as such like that. I personally believe that the next generation, the new generation now that is in college today or getting in college is a great generation because they are driven by purpose. It's complicating life, obviously, for older folks like us, but well, they're driving things the right way with the right reasons. They have embraced as well technology. So the starting base is really good. So the only thing I would say is help them stay curious. We've been saying for so many years, basically, follow your passion, follow your heart. I don't know if it's right, this one. If I think about my own life, Don, I don't think that was the right advice for me. It was much more to understand what's out there, what are all the opportunities. And well, it's a little bit like comparing with ice cream. So if the only one you've tried is vanilla, it's hard when someone is asking you, well, where's your heart basically driving you towards a different flavor? So have really the next generation remain as curious as they can be, to stay entrepreneurial, to want to solve the big problems that we have out there and not just to talk about them. And the last thing is that learning doesn't end once you end college or grad school ultimately, but this is something that continues until your very last day in life. And this is something that's not obvious. How do you keep learning forever and really keep being driven by that's the only way that you can grow as a leader and as a community member.
Oh, that's great. Your comment about curiosity particularly resonates with me. I just gave a talk on Saturday to a large group of educators talking about fostering an environment of voracious curiosity. And I just think that just exactly speaks so well, and I think we that message echoes through the halls of certainly the University of St. Thomas. I also liked your comment about this generation of students is just fantastic in terms of their sense of purpose, and I think the impact that you dangle or put in front of students through their work at Ecolab would be just the absolute attractant. It would be the right combination of purpose and impact, and I think you have a great future to look forward to in that with this generation that's coming through our university system. So my next question has got to do with how you position your organization, and you've played a key role in positioning at Ecolab as an environmental and social leader. Why are sustainability and diversity and inclusion so important to the work that you do at Ecolab?
first starting with sustainability, Don, it's what we are best at. We started in 1923. I was not part of that journey, obviously. So back then, with the company named Economics Laboratory. And it was driven by the promise for our hotels, ultimately, that they could clean their rooms in a way that they could reuse them immediately. And at the same time, so could do that in a way that was using less water, less energy, creating less waste, and having less labor that's related to it. That was the core promise of best results at the lowest total operating cost by reducing the usage of natural resources. Interestingly enough, back then it was driven only by an economic driver, hence Economic Laboratory as the name of the company. Forwarding 100 years later, well, is the core of sustainability or sustainable development, because there is no way that companies and people are going to do the right thing if it's not sustainable from a financial perspective as well. So it's really carried us for 100 years to the place that we are today. And interestingly enough, Don, we have many customers out there coming to us and saying, how can you help us become a more sustainable company? I was talking to this other company the other day who was saying, we want to become water neutral by 2030, which is one of the top 3 consumer goods companies out there. And this is one of the projects that we're starting with us. Microsoft, to take one of the other high-tech examples out there, said we want to be water positive by 2030. Help us get there. Our history, our technology, our teams are here to help those customers do better with less natural resources, which is driving growth for us. So sustainability is a very obvious one. So for us, this is at the core of what we're doing. This is what we're doing every single day. The names have changed, but the core has not. In terms of diversity and inclusion, well, this is who we are, which is obviously a very nice complement to sustainability. We know that the only way that we will be continuing to grow and be successful as a company long term is if we have the best talent and the best teams. And the only way to have the best teams is to have the most diverse teams as well, bringing new ideas, creative ideas, bringing perspective from the whole world. So at the end of the day, this is business driven, which has a positive social impact as well. So sustainability at the core of what we do, and D&I done at the end of the day is the best way to get there.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I have a couple of questions from the audience here, and I thought this one was particularly important. Obviously, there's some first of mind here with the pandemic. And I thought it was very interesting that you spoke about learning the most at the toughest moments in your career. And obviously, the whole world has been in one of those tough moments over the last year. So what's the biggest thing that you've learned from the pandemic? And how are you preparing yourself and your team for the crises that we do know will repeat, as you've gone through in your talk about whether it's 9/11 or the financial crisis or the pandemic crisis that we have today? So yeah, what have you learned in these tough moments? And then what are you doing to prepare your organization for the next crisis?
That's a cool question. I'd say that the first one well, I've learned so much, but the thing that was the biggest learning for me was how high human resilience was or is. As such, when we think about it, and we've heard many times that question, so all of us, obviously, if someone would have told us 2 years ago, the world is going to stop, we're all going to be home, we're all going to be doing everything so remotely as we're doing today as well, what would it mean for your company? What would it mean for the world? And when I look back and when I think about what the company has been delivering, we've beaten our cash flow in 2020 versus the past as well, in one of the most difficult years of the last 100 years, or after the World War II, at least. So when I think about what human beings can deliver in difficult times, this is unbelievable. And it's way more than we would have ever thought about. And talking about future crises, well, for us, there's two dimensions, obviously, in future crisis. There's on one hand the pandemic type of crisis, which we knew one would come. We know that now, that many had predicted that at some point it will come. We know it's going to come back as well as such. So we're driving research as well in a way that we can develop products that will be useful at that very moment. When we think about our fastest kill product against COVID, which is within 15 seconds, which is the world record that we brought on the market a few months ago. It was not developed for COVID-19. It was developed for the norovirus, which is a virus that we usually catch on a cruise ship and doesn't end up too well, but I won't go too much in detail. So during lunchtime, well, this is R&D that we could redirect on a very similar type of pathogen and bring it home ultimately, so to serve our customers for COVID-19. So it's to be ready for the next pandemics. But the second thing, which is broader, as you mentioned, so it's about financial crisis. It can be act of terror, as you mentioned, with 9/11 as well. Well, it's to train the organization to go through crisis with as much confidence as they can. And we really went through COVID-19 as an organization with the idea to learn and not to know everything in advance, because by definition you don't, but saying, first, we will make it. We will be okay, but we will learn and get stronger as well out of it. And when you get into the next crisis done, well, you're in a place that you already have seen some of this hardship and you can live it in a better way.
Excellent. Thank you. I like this question because it uses the word uncertainty, and I think that that's the big challenge that we have. So how do you maintain organizational vision during this challenging time? And as a senior leader, how did you navigate priorities and help others navigate those priorities when there is so much uncertainty?
The trick is to be truthful. And it's to basically convey what we know and convey what we don't know. It was important as well, so for me, for Doug Baker, for the whole team, to provide the organization with this sense of reassurance. We will make it. We will survive. And we had to know that we would. Obviously. So we've done a lot of scenario planning as well. We've compared it as well to the financial crisis and to 9/11 to consider the ones that you just mentioned, were the ones that were benchmarks for us, but also what happened with SARS and MERS in Asia or in the Middle East a few years ago. And really, so multiplied by 3, those most extreme scenario, and saying, are we going to make it if that happens? And if it lasts 1 or 2 years? And the answer was yes. So we could provide some reassurance to ourselves, but as well to the whole organization. And the next thing was to provide a roadmap. We didn't know how deep COVID would go, how broad it would expand, how long it would last. We all were wishing it would be as quickly over as we could have expected. Unfortunately, that's not exactly what happened. So we provided a framework to our team that we call the 4 Rs. Which was, the first one was to respond to the crisis. The second was, and that's one that came a bit later, was the rethink, was basically to say, let's step back. And before we get to the next phase, what have we got? What are the challenges? What are the risks? And what are the opportunities for us? And the third one was the retool, as we called it, was basically to reorganize and refocus R&D. Like I gave you that example of that the COVID disinfectant as well before, coming from norovirus, before we end on the 4th phase that hasn't started yet, which is the reignite phase, as we called it. And to maintain the focus on priorities, well, we got together as a team and we said there are 3 things that we can't miss. We don't know what else is going to happen because nothing is or was predictable back then as well. The first thing was to protect our team. We knew safety was everything. We have 25,000 people serving hospitals, long-term care facilities, pharma companies, all the places that could be at risk. We wanted to make sure that we could protect them as much as we could. We protected our teams as well. So our teams is intact. We haven't made big layoffs or whatever things that people have done elsewhere, because we knew that our team was everything we got. We protected the pace as well, making sure that once they were in a low moment for salespeople paid on commission, obviously they had not much, obviously, so to get in terms of earnings if we didn't protect them. We've done that as well. The second one was to protect our customers for all the obvious reasons. And the third one was to protect the company. And by saying protecting our people, our customers, and our company in that order, ultimately helped everyone around the world so get the priority straight and saying that matters, everything else comes afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. This next question talks about opportunities, and I think you just mentioned the retooling, the opportunities, the reignite at Ecolab. So based on what you've learned during the pandemic, what do you think the next big opportunities are? And I would maybe reframe this, not only just opportunities from a business standpoint, but maybe even organizationally. So and here at St. Thomas, we're working on the same thing. Okay, this is going to end. There'll be an other side of this mountain. And what do we learn during it? And what are we going to see ourselves in terms of being transformed or reignited on the other side of this? So maybe opportunities, both organizationally and from a business standpoint as well. Either way you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, for sure. Organizationally, it's obviously how we work as a team. And we are a very competitive organization, and in every business, you want to do better than the other one, which is good in a way in normal times. We've learned that by working together across the board between divisions, we are much stronger as a company. And when you think about how we serve a hospital, you get infections from many different places in a hospital. And the weakest link is the most critical one. If everything is done right, if we do our work right in an operating room, in central sterile, in the kitchen, in the laundry, in the housekeeping, in the water, in the air, and so on, but doctors are not disinfecting their hands, everything was for nothing. And that's why bringing all the capabilities and communities and teams, which are human beings at the end, together has been, in a way, demonstrated during the crisis and brought us much closer together as one as we've ever been, which was really great. And that's going to be an opportunity for us going forward. When we think about, obviously, business opportunities, it's helped our company longer term. So what's happening out there? The hygiene standards have risen over time. How high are they going to stay after the pandemic? I don't know. But I know that they're going to be higher than where they were before COVID-19. This is why when we think about biodecontamination of public spaces, this is a new business opportunity for us. Disinfectants that are killing quickly are new opportunities, obviously, for us. The whole hand care, as we discussed before, suddenly becomes more important. This is good for us. But when we think about food safety as well, interestingly enough, the pandemic has driven a very different awareness as well on the risk of food safety. I was talking this morning with the deputy commissioner of the FDA, talking about how can we ultimately bring all data along the farm to fork or the food chain in order to make sure that from the cow to the glass of milk that you're drinking, you know what happened and you know that it's as safe as it can be. It's never 100% safe. Obviously, it's about nature. This is new. And the last one I would mention, just top of my mind, is ultimately the whole digital world that has changed so dramatically. We've set up during the pandemic a complete new business, which is focused on data centers. Data centers have been absolutely booming during the last 12 months. It was true the few years before the pandemic, but it's accelerated so dramatically during the pandemic. Those data centers are driven by computers. Computers create a lot of energy. They need to be cooled down, and you need a lot of water for that. The data center needs as much water as 80 hospitals, just to put it in perspective. That has created a completely new business opportunity for us, and that's why we've created a division as well on that. So just a few examples like that, Don.
Yeah, it's amazing what's out there when you're curious and what comes up. Yeah. This next question is about partnering with community partners and non-government organizations, and how do you work with those companies and NGOs to help them with their sustainability issues?
That's a great question. Early in my career, I thought that NGO was kind of a bunch of dreamers. And NGOs were thinking that businesses were just here to make money. And over time, I have to admit that I was completely wrong. And the NGO, to a certain extent, as well, because as we discussed early on, Don, there is a way to bring those two together and really making sure that what you do and how you run your businesses can be done in a way that is making money to fund the future as well of those organizations and or companies. And one of the best example that I could share with you here is what we've launched almost 2 years ago, which is called the Water Resilience Coalition, which is now part of the United Nations Global Compact. But before I give you a bit more details, was really 2 years ago when we saw that the world was not moving in the right direction in terms of water consumption. The number I shared with you of the gap of supply and demand by 2030, 56%, a year ago was 40%. So it's increased dramatically. We're not moving in the right direction as a community, as a planet, as well as such. And when we looked at the numbers, we realized that there were 150 companies, only 150, that were responsible of a third of the industrial water consumption. And discussing with NGOs that were pushing as well those companies, well, we came to the conclusion of saying there is probably a way to get together and find ways to address that issue. And that's how we created the Water Resilience Coalition. We didn't want to have it driven by a company. That's why it became part of the United Nations Global Compact as well. We have many companies that have joined that coalition. Microsoft has been the first one, actually, so joining us. We have 20 companies today. We will have 50 by the end of this year. And we have 3 objectives. The first one is to learn from each other and reduce our water consumption. Second, it's to work with the NGOs in water-stressed area around the world where you have common watersheds where we all use the same water, like the Minnehaha Creek, to take an example here, and really making sure that we were minimizing our collective impact. And the third one is to provide access to people who do not have access to drinking water. And we're working with NGOs like water.org from Matt Damon as well, together in order to help provide water to people who do not have access as well to it. So we've come together in a very nice way, and that's a complete new journey for me and for us too.
Great. Wow, what impact. This next question is about your I guess, new job and surprises and that you might have had as CEO. And I know it's been a short time, and there's been a big elephant in the room over the last year or so while you've been CEO. But as you stepped into the space and started seeing what the function of the CEO and how this all works, and well, the audience is curious about any big surprises or any surprises that you've taken away from your first, I would say, year or so on the job.
Well, I've been a month on the job.
So right, yes. There was a transition, yes.
So it's been a month too now. So, my God, there is so much. One that comes up to mind is timing, obviously. It's not the most obvious timing right now, but it was the right timing, honestly, here, because Doug has built an unbelievable legacy in 16 years. We've really shaped the future of the company together. The past and the future. We've developed strategies together. We've built the foundations as well together. And he's been the best leader I've ever had. So I've learned so much as well from him. So it was the right time, which doesn't mean that it's an easy time, to say the least. It's an extreme time for everyone, and especially for the new guy. And for me, the biggest surprise in here, For a long time, I could go to Doug, who was sitting in the next office. And when I didn't know what was the answer to a difficult question, I could ask him and say, what would you do? What do you think? What's the right decision? Well, there is no other guy in the next office right now. So I can just call myself, think about it by myself. There's no one else that can decide for me. So yes, we have a strong team and I'm trying to get as much insight, as much input as I can from the team. But at the end of the day, there's no one else. It's just me. And this is, at the same time, it's fascinating because you really have this feeling that you're driving the destiny of the company, and it's scary like hell as well at the same time. And I have to admit that sometimes, or some days, it's more on the scary side, and some days it's more on the fascinating side. But at the end of the day, it's a great journey, and I love what I'm doing. I have a great team and a great mission.
Great team, great mentorship sounds like as well.
Absolutely.
Great. So here's a couple more questions. So what's the top thing now that you're in the room answering a lot of those tough questions by yourself? What are the tough questions that you're asking of your leadership team to focus on this year to impact people and culture? What are those sort of top things that you're asking your team to focus on?
Well, there are two things and two parts of your question, I guess, in here. When I think from a business perspective, the top thing is the question we cannot answer, the one that we all would like to know. When is it going to end? When is it going to turn? When are we getting back to normal life? And interestingly enough, so when we think about that, well, in order for us as a company to be ready, especially for the businesses that have been most impacted negatively, hotels and restaurants. Well, in order to be prepared to supply them with all the products and all the services and technologies that we need to provide them, we need 2 to 3 months to be ready. So when do you start? And one thing that we knew is coming too late would be a suicide for the company because customers would be asking something that we're not in a position to deliver. So by definition, we know that we will be too early. And this is the number one objective that we have as a company is saying we want to be ready for our customers when they need us the most in the most impacted areas, again, like restaurants and hotels or public spaces. Well, we need to be ready. And this is a hell of a journey to be ready for that, but it's kind of typical of our culture. We love solving big challenges, so we're working really adamantly on that, and we will be ready at the right time whenever the world is going to turn. From a team perspective and culture perspective, we've been on the journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion for a very long time. We've made great progress as an organization. But ultimately, when I think about our ambition by 2030 to have full representation, like 50-50 in terms of gender in management and in the organization, we're not tracking against that. We need to accelerate. So for the first time in our history, we've defined for every team out there, what's the objective? How many women do they need to hire? How many people of color? How many, and all that, in all sense of bringing diversity to the next level. And this is, for me, a very important driver of our future success, to have all our leaders understanding that driving diversity and inclusion in their own team not only is an imperative in terms of business objective that they have, but it's the only way that we help them get success as well, so for the long term. So those are the two top things I would mention.
Great. So I apologize. We are running out of time and short on time, and I have one question left for you. And I even see in the question pool here, there is a question about your engineering education. It's fun, near and dear to my heart, but we'll have to skip that one. And it's great to see a fellow engineer, a fellow engineer solving some just absolutely enormous, impactful challenges for the globe. So as a part of the engineering profession, thank you. But let me close with the last question that we have here. as you think about the next 10 years, and many of the questions you answered are really sort of that vision future, so there might be a little bit of overlap here. As you think about the next 10 years and your company's purpose for making the world cleaner, safer, and healthier, what makes you the most excited about Ecolab's future and your team?
Well, this is our time. We've been impactful for many, many years, almost 100 years now, on our journey, as you mentioned very well, of helping make the world a cleaner, safer, and healthier place. And time has never been more important, better than now, for us to accelerate towards that ambition. And if in the next 10 years we can reach what I've shared with you, basically helping save enough water for 1 billion people, if we can help protect the food for 2 billion people, if we can help sanitize the hands of 1 billion people every week around the world, and I would say if ultimately we can really become one of the very best places in the world for the very best talent, with the best heart, with the best value, that want to join us ultimately so to fulfill their own ambition, I think that we will be quite close to what the successful journeys that could be over the next 10 years.
Thank you. I really like your answer. This is our time, and it reminds me of that expression that this is your time as long as you know what to do with it. And I think it sounds like Ecolab is well on its way to making that all happen. So thank you. Really, on behalf of the globe, thank you for your work and leadership. And thank you for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and insights on leadership and everything. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Thank you. And I'd like to thank our audience today for listening. And we hope that you can join us for the First Friday next month webinar on March 5th, where we will be joined by Mike Roman, CEO and President of 3M. So in closing, thank you again, be safe, and enjoy the rest of your day, the weekend, and until we meet again. Cheers. Thank you, Christophe.